Welcome to Grassroots Safety Conversations with Ross. I'm your host, and yes, my name is Ross. Look, these podcasts hopefully will generate original, bottom-up solutions for sustainable ideas and improvement in safety awareness with real people sharing their real-world experiences. As your host, I've worked in the industry for over 40 years and consider myself a safety professional who has worked at the grassroots, in corporate environment, and also in the OH regulator environment. In saying this, my views and discussion in these podcasts are from my own experience as a safety professional. They are as is and do not reflect any official policy or position of the organisation that I've worked in and are currently working in. That's a legal bit covered anyway, as they say. The aim of my podcast is to try to demystify how complex safety has become and give solutions that I've used and still using in my day-to-day role as a safety advisor, mentor or consultant, or generally go-to guy. These conversations will cover safety-related topics from OH&S or WHS systems, depends what part of Victoria or the state you're in or in Australia, around education, and also around the C words. And I mean, what is culture, consultation, how do we communicate, and the crap factor. And look, we all know the crap factor. We have to put up with a lot of stuff in safety that people put forward and doesn't make any sense. Well, I can tell you sometimes it doesn't. In addition, I plan to have some special guests discussing their own safety challenges in the workplaces and in their career. And this will be very interesting to say the least. And hopefully the next podcast I'll have an astute colleague come along. He's going to interview me a little bit. So you're going to be interesting comments about that one. Look, at the end of the day, as a safety colleague of mine always says to his workers at the early morning toolbox briefs, I just want to see you leave the site each day to go home to your family or friends in one piece. Very sound advice. So let's get on with today's topic. Welcome to episode 5, Grassroots Safety Conversation with Ross, and thanks for listening. This one I'm going to talk about today is called the mouse trap effect. Look, it's once you're caught, there is no return. So we're just going to do a bit of reflection on that. And look, and there's always a smoking gun when working with humans, and we all have an opinion on how to manage safety in our workplace. So let's get started. Funnily enough, when I used to do a bit of lecturing at the Gordon to Cert 4 Diploma Advanced Diploma students, I used to put up a mouse captain, a little mouse with a little safety hat on, just about ready to jump on the mouse trap. And it's like reminding the mouses that, oh yes, I've got my PPE on, I'm not going to get hurt, but we know what mouse traps do. Once you step over that line, bang, you're gone. So students used to have a bit of a laugh about that, and look, so would I, but it's reminding people that the hierarchy of control, your 5 levels, we always go to the last line. This PPE, let's wear PPE, let's think about that sort of scenario. And then I had some other people, funnily enough, talk to me about safety 101 and zero harm around, and let's keep that in mind what the mousetrap effect's about. So look, safety 101, my God, and this is my opinion, please don't take it the wrong way. Lots of companies still use old-fashioned slogans and images to promote safety in the workplace. I remember that, going to a certain place, 1,000 days without a lost time injury. Yeah, well, a lot of nonsense. We all know that doesn't work. I mean, look, it's nice to have slogans. They're nice to have. But how do you communicate, let's get it right, something new? And what's your takeaway? Look, let's think about this. Do you find yourself in the message? Does the message resonate with you? Now, that's an interesting one. I remember at one place, they used to have a stick on a mirror in the toilet. You're looking at the person who's managing your safety. Oh, my God, give me a break. Does the company find itself in the message? We put the slogan up, put all our logos around from the company. do they really engage? Do they really know what they're trying to really do? Does the organisation really believe in it? I doubt it. But the bottom line about 101 is, do you or do they feel inspired to do something about safety? So I look at Safety 101 is that we need to challenge the assumptions and presumptions in order to generate a discussion. A big word, that discussion. Oh, communicate and consultation. Interesting. To advance a bigger cause than us and be better good for tomorrow. Remember, I think I said in my earlier remarks, is that we want people to go home at night in a safe manner. So let's have a look at the first one, conversation. Remember the little mouse with his little hat on? Safety first. Now, this is really controversial. Do you really believe that a business does exist to make people safe and then to produce revenue? How many incidents do you see reported by the regulators that on building sites and all that, people got hurt because they're taking shortcuts, don't wear harnesses? I was talking to my son-in-law the other night, and there's some sites, about dust suppression. I mean, come on, we know industry sites have got to do the right thing. Is the business profitable? And it won't last long if it doesn't do the right thing. So let's just have a think about that in area. But it's a pretty much a simple equation. No revenue equals no business equals no employees equals no safety. And yes, that's that my dog is barking in the background. But I'm going to persevere as safety professionals do. So I'm just going to remind that one again. No revenue, no business, no employees equals no safety. There's three very important scenarios here. Just remember, safety can only be a servant, and to serve and support. Remember, interesting. I'm probably going to get hammered over that one. So the next one I'm going to have a quick yet about is safety starts with you. I wonder if all the directors and CEOs and all those sort of people think about that when they're having their little discussions at the table. Does safety start with me? Well, do they know their obligations as a duty holder? That's another podcast for another day. Well, the slogan is not incorrect, but it's limited, And what we're missing here is that each single person that walks on this earth is a representative of the human species. I'm going to be controversial again. And first and foremost, the goal of all species is to survive by protecting itself and hopefully evolve. I'll let you ponder on that one. So we want to look after ourselves. But do we think about looking after our colleagues and our friends? No, we don't. Look, safety is a part of us, and since the time of birth. And when we die, well, we can't do much about that one, can we? We need to decide on a level of commitment and how far we want to push it when it starts with us. And there's another one I read once, an article, and we talk about little mouse again, the helmeted head. Let's put the safety hat on our head, and we're going to save everything, and we don't need to worry about it because we're focusing on one scenario. Look, you see work sites, and now a lot of people watch a certain show on TV, a renovation show, and you see during the day, everybody's got their safety gear on. And when certain people come at night to judge, no safety gear on. It's a work site. Hell, what's going on here? So we have to choose a rule for one and choose a rule for another. So that leads me on to zero harm. And oh my Lord, I could talk about this for ages. But zero harm is no different. It's about developing the process and letting the results take care of themselves. Letting the results take care of themselves. Can we foster better agreement? Do we understand the systems? Do we need the workers to focus on their mental well-being? All these things about zero harm. We can only do so much. But when you look at zero harm, I always used to say to people, if you're driving a car, are we driving towards zero harm? Most data is behind us, not forward of us. It's different things. We live the moment, don't we? And when we get to zero harm incidents, what happens then? What's beyond zero? You know what I mean? Does anybody think about what's going on past we get zero incidents, or we prevent risk-taking, human-machinery interactions gone. So we need to think about that in that sort of scenario. So I'm not a big fan of zero harm or safety 101, because I go back to my little mouse, think as that's a little human being, got his little helmet on, will I, won't I take that risk in that mousetrap effect? One thing we also talk about is the old Swiss cheese and the 5 layers of defence. I mean, we get this shoved down our throat at uni and at the Gordon, when I used to do that. It's not that difficult, is it? But I originally saw a really good article about the Swiss cheese model. That's still fairly relevant. I mean, we have the event, we have our layers, and I've seen some people put, layer 1 like engineering controls, and layer 2 is administration, layer 3 is behavioural controls, and then we talk post-incident. And thank God they put post-incident into this. So if we think of the Swiss cheese model, think of it so far as reasonable practical, the 5 layers defence. Something will always get through because of human nature. And we can't do much about that, can we? So, I did mention so far as reasonable practical, that famous word, so far. I'd like to remind people it's the state of knowledge. And what is the knowledge that a duty holder has or ought to reasonably to have about the hazard of risk and eliminating? Look, it's state of knowledge. If you don't know, you don't know. So what do? You ask the question. Are we game to ask that question? I don't know. And why don't we? Are we scared? Is it just the power control of people? I don't know. It's an interesting... And then we get on to the reasonable practical side of it. If you don't know, is it reasonable practical? Ask the question. Now, this is a bit illegal here, is that it's an objective test. That is, a person is to be judged by the standard behaviour expected of a reasonable person. A reasonable person. I'll leave that one here. You can have a think about that one. Who do you think what a reasonable person would understand? Is it black or white? No, it's not, is it really? And look, in safety, we love playing in the grey area, don't we? Like to push those boundaries. So a reasonable person. Let's move on to that one. By law, it's are they just? Are they rational? Are they appropriate? Ordinary? Or in unusual circumstances? It may refer to reasonable care, cause, compensation. Very interesting what the law says. I'll just go back to what a rational person. Have a think about some of the people you work in your workplace. Now, a person, by law, is called a natural person. Now, I love these words. So think of that mouse with the old hat. Is he a natural person? Is he? I don't know. It's an interesting thing when we talk about what a reasonable person was so far as reasonable practical to understand their key risks and when they look at the mousetrap effect. Look, so in closing, when you think about the mouse, his helmet, looking at the mousetrap, so far as reasonable practical, what a reasonable person would do. Well, they can only do what they can only do if they know what is reasonable. We can train them, we can show them, we can do whatever we need to. They can do the job in a safe manner, but can they do it? We live in a different age now from the 70s when I first started safety. We are multinational races in our organisations, different languages, different religions. We've got to take all this into account when we think about looking after people so far as reasonable practical. And just remember the old mousetrap. If we don't look after him, a reasonable person will think that the helmet is okay and I'll have a nibble of that cheese and we have an incident. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope it's been of some benefit, so as you get to think about your family and friends and how working safely will get you home to them. It's always a challenge, isn't it, listening and trying to discern what I'm talking about, but let me know. If you've got any issues and that sort of stuff, look, I'm on Instagram, Grassroots Safety with Ross. That's where I can notify when the next podcast is available, and you can email me at grassrootsafety@outlook.com. Yes, Grassroots Safety is all one word. And if you have a topical query on what I discuss on this podcast, let me know. Shoot me a thing in the comments. Happy to have a conversation or do a podcast about it. More than happy about that. And look, this podcast is sponsored by Safety Zone, a Victorian-based safety consulting firm based in Victoria, Australia, as I just mentioned. And look, I do not receive any financial support from them, just moral support, and I do need a lot of that in doing these podcasts. And hopefully one day my daughter will give me a hand to do the Instagram post a bit better, but I'm getting there slowly. So until next time, my friends, live long and prosper, as Spock would say.